What's up, guys? I'm LQ. This is the LQ Review. Thank you so much for joining me here at my YouTube channel. This is where I talk about all the geeky, nerdy stuff that I love to talk about. And right now, I want to give you guys my thoughts on last night's episode of Expedition X Season 2, Episode 4. And this was an episode based on the Swamp Ghost. Now, I always like the ghost episodes because these are episodes where you're always going to hear something, you're always going to hear sounds, you're always going to see lights. There's always going to be something that happens because that's what happens when you're out in the wild. You hear stuff. There's animals, there's wind, there's old buildings, there's creaky walls, creaky floors. There's always sounds, and it makes for a very entertaining episode. Even if a lot of it is hogwash, it makes for a very entertaining episode, just watching their reactions to what may or may not be an everyday occurrence, a natural phenomenon in nature. And I will say this episode had the thing that streaked up in the sky that she caught on the FLIR camera, that could have been anything. But the orb at the end of the street, that was something. And that was the only thing I found in this episode to be really compelling, was that orb that was shining, and then it kind of went out. And even after it went out, you could still see kind of where the light was, some residual light. I thought that was compelling. I didn't think there was an easy explanation for it. I definitely didn't think that it was gas from the swamp on fire. So that was a compelling moment. Let's talk about the swamp gas. I love the idea of lighting swamp farts on fire. I want to go to the swamp with that upside down beer bong and my lighter and light swamp gas on fire. I think it sounds like a blast. I don't know why people don't do it more often. If I lived in that part of Texas, I would probably one day get eaten by an alligator because I'm out playing with swamp gas in the swamp. That looks like fun. And let's just be clear. When I'm watching these Discovery channels or these Discovery shows, one of the things that is really compelling to them from me is just getting out in nature. These people being out in nature, these people who have the money and the means to travel all the time, getting out there in nature, and me kind of watching the show and to some extent living vicariously through them. Watching Phil and Jessica tread through the swamp, where there's alligators, go through the river banks and the swamp bank where there's water moccasins right there at the foot of the vegetation. Seeing them look for these things, seeing the adventure that they're having is a big part of the appeal to a show like, for me, of a show like this. Watching the adventure. I'm not at any risk sitting in my living room watching the adventure from home. I'm participating because I'm watching it and I'm sharing in the investigation. But I'm not at any risk. I know I sound like a fuddy-duddy right now. I actually really like to travel. I love to travel. I love to get out in nature. I love to do new things. But I also don't have the means to travel like these people do. I'll never see the entire world to the same extent that these people do because they have the backing of a major corporation behind them to film these television shows. So, even though I like to travel, even though I do travel, even though I do get out in nature and go camping and hiking and all that good stuff, I'll never be able to do it to the extent that they do with the expertise that they do. So there is a certain level of living vicariously through Phil and Jessica as they go on these adventures. There's nothing in this episode that made me believe that the swamp was haunted. There's too much out there in terms of natural explanations for lights, natural explanations for sounds, natural explanations for apparitions. There's too much out there. Let's not even discard the fact that areas where there's gas can cause people to maybe see things that aren't there. There's a lot of possible explanations. So nothing in this episode convinced me that this swamp was haunted. But what there was in this episode that convinced me was that this swamp is a weird place. It's a weird place with a lot of weird stuff going on and a lot of scary stuff too, especially when you talk about the wildlife. That would make it compelling for a visit, and that was really what I enjoyed the most about this, was this little corner in Texas, probably not such a little corner, probably a really big corner in Texas that they had an exciting adventure in, looking for ghosts and finding some lights. I had fun with this episode. like I said, other than a ball of light at the end of a road, there wasn't much compelling in it, but it was entertaining, as Josh Gates tends to do. Josh Gates tends to have a way of framing this stuff that may or may not be anything significant. He has a way of framing it and editing it and setting it all up and presenting it as a narrative that makes it very entertaining. And that's why he's been so successful at what he does. Because even when he's out on an investigation and he doesn't find anything, he's still able to let us experience the culture with him. And that's kind of what we experienced with Phil and Jessica in this. May not be the culture of Texas, but we definitely got to experience the oddities of Texas. And that made this episode worthwhile. So, I had fun with it. Nothing convinced me, but I had fun. What did you think of episode 4 of season 2 of Expedition X, The Swamp Ghost? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, and as always, thank you so much for joining me here at the LQ Review, where we get to talk about all the geeky, nerdy stuff that we love to talk about. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.